But now, for example, why? Why is there now, for example, power so and so? Because they see how we explain it. When we say we can't explain the reason, then in this second example, there are ropes. These ropes are controlling it, they say. For example, it tries to mention the rope. Actually, the rope it mentions is again, in fact, a law, but it attributes a power to it by imagining it. So it says, for example, there is power in matter. When it says there is power, it seems like it has explained the reason. However, we look at the issue of power in two stages. If we truly accept that there is power, the master says, power is blind. Blind power cannot do anything. There must be a conscious, aware power. That's how he ends it. Secondly, there is no such thing as power in matter anyway. Just as matter cannot possess knowledge, it cannot possess power either. Because these are attributes. That is, power is an attribute. It's not a separate entity. It is an attribute of an entity. Since it is an attribute of an entity, for example, the master divides attributes into substance and accident in the Mesnevi. Accidental and substantial. For example, accidental. For example, the heat of iron. If you apply heat from the outside, the iron gets hot. That momentary heat is accidental. It cools down again because it's not its own attribute. It's not an attribute originating from its own essence, so it changes, comes and goes. But its own attribute, for example, iron is hard. It's always hard because it's its own attribute. That's called substantial. If an attribute of something changes, it shows that it is accidental. Being accidental shows that it is given from the outside. It doesn't belong to it. That is, it is created. So the things we call power, for example, the powers they attribute to matter. Where does it originate from in matter, my friend, this power you speak of? Where is this power in it? Then, for example, you say proton repels proton. Then you say, why does a proton repel a proton? It says there are other particles inside. They say they repel it. If you ask what repels them, it will mention the one below it. It will say something else, constantly. Or when you separate it, that power disappears, it comes back. So it seems to be accidental. And when it is accidental, or what we call nature is also like that. For example, you say H2O. When you combine two, hydrogen and oxygen, for example, the attribute that comes to it is the attribute of water. Let's say the nature of water comes. When you separate it, it is created at that moment. But when you separate it, the attribute disappears. Look, accidental, you combine it, it comes back. You separate it, for example, you separate hydrogen and oxygen, it becomes something separate. You say hydrogen, you separate hydrogen. You separate an atom of hydrogen into its protons and electrons. Does anything remain that is hydrogen? Number, everything becomes the same thing. They all have the same three elements, the same particles, electron, proton, neutron, for example. So 109 elements show different attributes. But when you go down to a lower level, when you break them all down, no properties remain. If the proton property remains in the background, that remains, that remains, that remains. When you break that down, nothing remains either. Look, the attributes disappear. This shows that it is accidental. Things that are accidental are given, they are not their own. That is, they are created. If the attribute of something is created, then the thing itself is also created. That's how it goes. So the point that power cannot be attributed to matter, to a particle, is a separate point. If matter, if a particle, has no power and no knowledge, then what else would you expect from this matter, from this atom? You've cut off its hands and arms. These are calculations of probability. For example, I will now hold a 3-digit number in my head. Can you guess it, for example? You will guess it again. You will guess it again. For example, you will guess everyone's here. For example, someone will hold a number, you will guess it. Omar will hold 1, you will guess it. I will hold mine, you will guess mine. Then we will hold again, you will guess that too. For example, we will do this 1,000,000 times, you will guess all of them. Instead of 3 digits, we will make it 10 digits. You can't even guess the first one, can you? But the man says there's a 1 in a million chance. Brother, you said it's a 1 in a million chance. Don't drown your head in mathematical figures like that. Come to practical life. Come on, hold 1 in your head, for example. Guess it. Come on, guess it. 1 in 1,000 chance, come on. Guess it. For example, the master's sentence. An artistic work necessitates an artist. Now the man says he will explain an artistic work without needing an artist. So what does he say? For example, if you wait millions of years, he says an artistic work can emerge. For example, he attributes it to time. Brother, look, can you say this? I mean, for example, this Arab, what's the latest brand of car, for example? Mercedes? The most luxurious car is Mercedes. Now, for example, look at the world. There's iron, there's plastic, there's everything. If we waited millions of years, and the winds and storms blew, and these pieces of iron gathered here, and by waiting millions of years, they would then take shape. A car, as you said, consists of 15,000 parts. Each of the 15,000 parts takes its own shape, and then they come together. Is this something that will happen with time? Matter tends to disintegrate. I mean, if you put a ready-made car, it will disappear after millions of years. It will disappear. So the man, in order not to say master, some become dakhriyun, materialists who believe in the eternity of time. They are temporalists. So they say, if we say millions of years, it's not enough. They say billions of years. If it's billions of years, it will happen. Hey, brother, whether it's millions or billions, it doesn't matter. I mean, this building is a very simple entity compared to a human being. If I put 1,000 stones here, will these stones come on top of each other? In 1,000,000 years, not even 1,000,000,000, 1,000,000,000,000 years, brother, will they form a wall, a floor? This is not something that will happen with time. It's not something of time. But the man says we drown it in time. For example, if a bear, let's say a normal bear, goes to the poles, it needs to immediately, in a few hours even, not even that long, it needs to immediately get fat, become plump, a layer of fat to not freeze against the cold there. If it's going to get fat by waiting millions of years, we'll go there in that state and freeze to death in an hour. I mean, if that evolutionist came and we talked like this, the master's words exactly, having become foolish from foolish wise men, truly, that's what we would say. I mean, truly, those people are like that. I looked at a couple of them. The man is like that. Then he says, the lizard, when the fish came out of the sea, he says because its legs were short, its belly was rubbing against the ground. It had difficulty walking. So he says, it lengthened its legs a bit to walk without rubbing. There is no power and no strength except in Allah, the Exalted, the Mighty. I mean, brother, what is a leg? What does it mean to lengthen a leg? How will it lengthen its leg? Come on, let's see our brother's legs lengthen. Come on, lengthen your legs. I mean, within that thing you call a leg, there is bone, there is nerve, there are many things. I mean, these need to change their structure, their whatnot, with rubbing. Then, I mean, can such a thing happen? The man is saying this, brother, the man is saying this. The man is a science professor, a biology professor, a whatnot. What does Allah Almighty do there? There is a will, there is an intention, there is something. For example, when we were reading with the brothers about this development, an example came to our minds. For example, we know the first phone that came out, it was huge, wasn't it? Its battery was like a brick. And now, there are the latest touchscreen phones. By the way, has it been 10 years since that phone came out? 20 years? No. I had just finished when the first cell phone came out. Let's say 30 years, for example. Within 30 years, the evolution of the cell phone, let's talk with that word. Let's say it evolved. How did this phone go through this evolution? Did the phone do it on its own? Did the phone say, these people need me, let me develop myself a bit? Did it happen on its own? Did it happen by chance? Or is there an engineer behind this work who put in effort, thousands, hundreds of thousands of them? For example, our brother-in-law is working in America right now just to slightly improve the camera of a phone at least. I mean, for night shots, for daytime shots, they work for years for a slight improvement, for a slight improvement. I mean, there is already a camera, there is a camera to increase its pixels, to increase its clarity. So how many engineers work for a year or two, and then there is a slight improvement. But these people say that the eye developed and went towards perfection, brother. I mean, look, even a slight improvement doesn't happen by chance. There are many behind it. Why? Because it has its chip, it has many electronic circuits, it's whatnot. Those need to be made. It doesn't happen by chance. And the thing we call the eye is more marvelous than that. What is the megapixels of the most advanced camera right now, brother? The human eye is 576 megapixels. The human eye is still, what more? How many years are there still? But one can say, but right now, the master always speaks with facts. The master is not a dreamer. The master always speaks about things that exist in the real world. For example, does this phone exist, brother? Is it an artistic work? It comes into being through an artisan. There has never been an artistic work like this that came into being over millions of years. For example, now they are excavating and the tablets from ancient times are coming out. Similarly, the man doesn't call this a natural phenomenon. Here he says a people lived here before. He says a civilization, a culture came here, for example. Look, he sees 3 or 5 lines of writing on a piece of stone. Okay, he says, there was a civilization here thousands of years ago. None of them say that it happened on its own afterwards. First, it is necessary to decide how something is or could be. That's what I understand. This is what I understand in this picture, in this sequence. If there is an artistic work, what must be the cause of this artistic work? It must possess knowledge, power, insight, and wisdom. Then you say causes, causes. Do these exist in your cause? Then move on. Are there atoms? Do these exist in atoms? Move on. You say law, program. You say law. Do these properties exist in them? Move on, move on, move on, move on. That is, unless you put forward a cause that possesses knowledge and power, it has no answer, he says. So now let's say evolutionists say it's possible within the realm of possibility. The Master says about that, the possibility that does not arise from evidence or a sign has no value. For example, he mentioned the crude, savage mind. That's very important there. For example, how will this stone come on top of that stone? How will this stone come on top of that stone? Someone will take it and lift it and place it, right? Is there any other explanation for this? There is no explanation. For example, according to the evolutionist, how can it come? I mean, it can come over time. Okay, what would happen over time that would bring it on top? I mean, what will happen over time? What will bring it on top in billions of years? Only the wind can. I mean, a wind will blow, it will lift that stone. When the wind blows, it will throw it somewhere else anyway. Lift it and place it on top. Look, that thing needs to be a conscious and aware wind. It will place it. Otherwise, why would it come? For example, I put the pen here now. I put its ink. Then I put the paper too. Then I wait. I will wait millions of years. This pen will take ink from here and, okay, let's say it doesn't even take the ink is inside. Then this pen will write this page. How will it write in millions of years? We are waiting now. How will it write, for example? How will it write such a thing? What will happen in those millions of years that this pen will then write a letter on that paper? How will it write, brother? The pen needs to stand up, right? It needs to come onto the paper. It will draw the letter A. How will it draw the letter A? When you think about it, there is no such thing. Let's say it wrote the letter A randomly. How will it write B next to it? How will it write C? How many letters will it write? Let's say it wrote A, wrote B. It doesn't make sense. It needs to be a meaningful word. It will write a word after A and B, so and so. I mean, when you contemplate this, it's not something that will happen over time. So let's go back here. Then he sees a notebook in which the organizational program of that palace, the list of its contents, and its governing laws are written. Even that notebook, which is without hands, eyes, and form. Let me say one more thing, just to make a point. Now, for example, in biology, there is something, right? They make human bodies out of plastic. For example, they make hearts, they make kidneys. We used to see them when we were kids. They make intestines and so on for educational purposes. The man, for example, takes it apart, says, look, this is the heart, for example. He opens it, shows it, closes it back up. It has its thing, its intestines, muscles, for example. He takes out the muscles, there are bones, and so on. So they have made a human model for educational purposes, but you can separate the parts, you can put them back together. If we saw such a model, could an evolutionist say, this model came into being in millions of years, right? Right? What do you think? If he says that, I wouldn't talk to that person afterwards anyway. I mean, look, a human made of plastic, inanimate, let's say it has 100 organs, brain, eyes, ears, heart, stomach, kidney, let's say 100 organs. So the 100 organs will be in that shape as plastic with their color and shape, and they will also be assembled in a way that they are compatible with each other. You will combine 100 pieces and it will become a human model. If a person says that such a model can come into being in millions of years, there is nothing more to talk about. You should send him somewhere else. So what is the most reasonable logic? It has a master, it has an artisan, it has a mold, it has something. That shape, I mean. The master says, what necessity is there for you to go that way? If you say it has a master, the matter will be resolved very easily. In order not to say there is a good master, they say millions of years, this, that. Then of course he says, I say for example that models, you say how did this happen? Of course the list of existing things, these exist in humans anyway, he says for example. You say why is this here? These exist in humans anyway, he says. I found the list of existing things, he says. According to that, it is normal for this to exist. He says it's natural. What will you say? The foolish one's what? The foolish one's silence. The answer to a fool is silence, to be silent. Whereas if you put that plastic model and a human being side by side, it is a work of art, billions, trillions of times more skillful. It doesn't even have cells. It doesn't even have cells. Within the cells, it doesn't even have subcellular particles. It doesn't have DNA. It doesn't have RNA yet. It doesn't have anything yet. Just 100 shapes. I mean, there is no one who has contemplated this matter as much as the Master. He wrote his contemplation like this, may Allah be pleased with him. When you read this, the matter becomes clear. But the only point I understand here is this. This measure needs to be grasped well. An artistic work necessitates an artisan. After understanding this well, the rest is easy. An artistic work necessitates an artisan. If you say you are looking for an escape, that is now taking the ball to another field. The man says, you are insulting me. What do you know, etc. But we shouldn't go there. I said, you are putting forward the list of existing things. I'm also saying to you that the list of existing things cannot be a master. We were looking for a master, you will say, for example. He sees a notebook in which it is written, and even that notebook, which is without hands, eyes, and form, just like the other things inside, has no ability whatsoever to form and adorn that palace. But being compelled, out of necessity, considering this notebook as a title of the scientific rules in relation to the other objects, he sees this notebook as related to the entirety of that palace and says, it is this notebook that formed, organized, and adorned that palace, and made, attached, and placed these objects, thus turning his savagery into the delirium of fools and drunkards. Just like this example, infinitely more orderly than the palace in the example. Look, these expressions all make it easier to understand. Just like this example, infinitely more orderly than the palace in the example. That is, incomparably more orderly, more perfect, and into this palace of the world, all of whose surroundings are filled with miraculous wisdom, enters a savage man who goes towards the denial of divinity and carries the idea of nature. Enters a savage man who goes towards the denial of divinity and carries the idea of nature, not thinking that it is the work of the necessary being who is outside the realm of possibility. Outside the realm of possibility, that is, not being within this universe, not being any part of this universe, the realm of possibility is the created. So not being within these created things, being outside of them, not thinking that it is the work of the necessary being, and turning away from it, distancing himself from that idea, he says, I will not accept it, for example. I mean, brother, why are you distancing yourself? Why are you distancing yourself? Explain that to me. He doesn't explain it. I mean, he says, I will memorize it without saying Allah. And within the realm of possibility, he sees a collection of the laws of divine custom, which is like a tablet of divine decree that is written and erased, and a notebook of the laws of divine power's execution that changes and transforms, and a list of divine artistry, which is given the very wrong and erroneous name of nature. And he says, since these objects require a cause, nothing seems as related as this notebook. Although reason does not accept in anything that this eyeless, unconscious, powerless notebook cannot do, this? Why? Eyeless, unconscious, powerless. This notebook, which is the work of absolute sovereignty. Whom are we looking for? What are we looking for? We are looking for the one who realizes absolute sovereignty. It cannot make the creation, which is the work of absolute sovereignty and requires infinite power. But since I do not accept the ancient maker, then the most appropriate thing is to say that this notebook made and makes this, he says. We also say, O you who have become foolish, from foolish wise men, drunken fool. What is the best thing to say to this, brother? A drunken fool who has become even more foolish than the fools of fools. This foolishness is nothing else. I mean, just one word fool is enough. A drunken fool who has become even more foolish than the fools of fools. Only such a person can say this, he says. I mean, don't consider this an insult either. He says at the beginning that this is the most appropriate. I am ready to prove that it is so. It is not an insult that the person is like that. For example, there is a project at the base of this building. If a person said, this project built this building, wouldn't that be foolish? It's the same thing he's saying, even worse than that. Take your head out of the swamp of nature. Look behind you. Of course, this is not easy. It's not easy to get out of the swamp of nature. Someone definitely needs to pull them out. Take your head out of the swamp of nature. Look behind you. I mean, it's not easy to grasp, to find this correct contemplation, to come to this direction, because our brains are like that. How many years of education do we get in schools? Omar? Elementary school, middle school, high school, university. Always the same way, always the same way. Laws, laws, laws. By saying laws, laws have become gods in our hearts. So, the destruction, the cleansing of this. There is a description of a swamp. Take your head out of the swamp of nature. Look behind you. When he says, look behind you from atoms to planets, I mean, you are looking at nature. You will make God do it. I mean, leave these, look elsewhere now. I mean, look behind you. Look at where the main manifestation is coming from. Look behind you. All beings from atoms to planets. So what he calls the palace is all beings from atoms to planets. I mean, it encompasses all created things. See a glorious maker, to whom they testify with separate tongues and point with their fingers, and see the manifestation of the eternal painter who made that palace and wrote the program of that palace in that notebook. For example, we can say that he also looks at the DNA point here. What has God Almighty done, for example? He wrote the organizational program of the tree, the list of its contents, and its governing law in the seed of the tree, and put it inside. So, for example, in human DNA, he has inscribed the entire list of existing things, such as what the eye color of the human will be, what not, etc. But the index of a book cannot be the one who wrote the book. The book that is also writing, because, and there is an index at the end of the book that is also a part of the book. It is also written. So the index is not the one who wrote the book. The writing of a program in DNA is also an art, a more magnificent art. But those people think that because there is an index written in it, DNA, is doing it. That is also an art. That is also a work. See the manifestation of the eternal painter who wrote its program. Look at his command. Listen to his Quran. Get rid of those deliriums. Because if it were something that a person could figure out with their own mind, wouldn't this matter be very easy, God willing? This is the second issue.